Ahí se está conectando Zoom con YouTube. Esto no me permitía hacer el otro día, no sé qué pasaba y ahora lo ponemos. Ahora sí. Ahora estamos en vivo. Ahí estamos en vivo.
No te olvides de pasarme tu enlace.
Bien, bien. Me muteo en el vivo, así no se me corta. Y pongo a grabar. ¿Ahí recibiste, David, el link? Bien. Bueno, arrancamos entonces esta segunda charla de Fabia Butler Laplace en el marco del Programa Argentino y Británico de Asistentes de Idiomas. Este ciclo de charlas está organizado por la Dirección de Plurilingüismo de Chaco, dependiente de la Subsecretaría de Interculturalidad y Plurilingüismo. Y bueno, nos acompaña Alexis Rojas, que es el director de Plurilingüismo de la provincia. Así que, Alexis, ¿quieres dar algunas palabras de bienvenida?
Buenas tardes, un saludo grande a todos los presentes en este día, en esta, en esta jornada, con este ciclo de charlas. Bueno, mi nombre es Alexis Rojas, soy director del Plurilingüismo y en esta oportunidad vamos a estar escuchando a la asistente de idioma, Fabia, y con Nadia Burgos en esta oportunidad para que nos pueda brindar esta temática que nos pueda comentar Fabia de su mirada, su perspectiva, la parte también cultural en general y bueno, desde nuestra dirección, desde la Subsecretaría de Interculturalidad de la provincia, este, acompañamos esta iniciativa en esta jornada, como lo fue la temática anterior en este ciclo de charlas. Así que sea una jornada muy fructífera, que sea una jornada de intercambio, que sea una jornada también que se pueda dialogar, conocer en ese sentido también lo que nos pueda brindar en esta oportunidad Fabia con esta charla. Así que desde ya mi acompañamiento y un saludo grande a todos los profesores, a estudiantes que están conectados en esta reunión. Así que, María, gracias por el espacio y bueno, que sea una linda jornada.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias, Alexis. Así que bueno, desde la Dirección de Plurilingüismo tratamos de organizar este ciclo de charlas, ya que en años anteriores quizás los asistentes solamente podían estar en lugares físicos, como en el profesorado de inglés de Resistencia, y otros profesores, otros docentes del interior del Chaco no podían tener acceso a los beneficios que tiene hablar con un hablante intercultural. Así que en este caso decidimos con Fabia preparar algo sobre en español, los que vieron el título de la charla en español habrán visto que se llama Desencuentros Culturales. Y bueno, en inglés estuvimos pensando que ponerle algo que sea parecido a ese juego de palabras y bueno, decidimos ponerle cultural misunderstandings, como las diferencias y similitudes que se encontró Fabia al llegar a nuestro país y a nuestra provincia. Así que Fabia, todo tuyo.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Sí, ya.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna talk about a few things that I've noticed that are different between the two cultures, between the UK and Argentina. And I've just got a few here, so such as greetings, foods and meal times, school hours and work hours as well, types of shops, and the differences that we have, and also the nightlife, for any of you that are interested, the difference. Yeah, so that's a rough summary of what I'm gonna talk about.
Okay. Cami, click on it. Ahí Cami nos está ayudando con la presentación. Así que Cami, pasa.
Okay, So the first one, I think the most obvious one that I noticed when I got here was greetings. In the UK, we don't tend to greet people with 2 kisses, even though in a lot of other European countries that is really normal. So, I mean, if you're to meet someone in a formal setting for the first time, you'd probably use a handshake. If you're meeting someone at your school or a new boss or something like that. I guess if you're meeting up with closer friends, a hug or that handshake type of thing. I think in the UK they call it a dab, but I'm not 100% sure. That's the lingo that they use. So that's really common between friends. And then I guess if you're introduced to a group, maybe friends of friends, or you might know 1 or 2, but you don't really know the rest, you'll probably be introduced by name. And then you'll just stand there and, say hi to everyone, but you're not expected to go and greet every single person individually all at once, or straight away. You might get to know them more individually as the night goes on or as the day goes on, but you're not expected as soon as you meet them to go around and greet them all individually. So that's what I thought the main difference was. We're quite, it's very normal to just introduce yourself verbally, maybe wave. And if they're closer friends, then it's a bit more physical, a bit more affectionate. But yeah.
What about distance, Fabia? Distance when you're greeting one another?
I think
because here we tend to be touchy, we get close to one another.
Yeah, I think if you don't know them, you're quite separate. There's not really a lot of physical. But if you're friends, it can be quite touchy. I hug all of my closest friends when I see them. But if I don't know someone, I'll probably just stand there. We stand far away and we just say hi, and you chat. It's more verbal rather than physical.
All right. And if it is a more formal, here is that you will probably be introduced by name. If it's a more formal situation, you would be introduced by name and last name, right?
If they're expecting you, I guess maybe if you're going to a job interview, they'd probably just say your name. But yeah, otherwise you'd probably say your name and your surname.
All right. Yeah, because here I don't know if you already learned the word tutear, Tutear. So here everybody is introduced by their first name, and what I found out in other countries is unless they don't give you permission to call them by their names, you're supposed to be saying Mr., Miss, Mrs. You're not supposed to call them by their names. Here it's just we are on a first name basis. We wouldn't be called by our last names. So yeah, I was wondering if there's kind of a permission, but please call me Fabi or please call me Fabia. And if you don't give them that permission, they would just call you Mrs. Butler Laplace in a more formal setting, I mean.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and maybe it's not you personally, but it would be the person you're meeting. So the boss of the company or the head teacher, they would be the ones to say, oh no, call me, and then their actual name.
All right, perfect. Okay, good. Okay, Cami, next slide.
Again, another sort of pretty obvious one, I think, is types of food and more specifically the meal times. So, I mean, this is all very general. Obviously, it depends on families, on individuals, but typically British people will eat 3 meals a day, and then we snack all day in between. Breakfast, again, depends, but usually between 7 and 9 a.m. Lunch between 12 and 1:30, and then dinner between 6 and 8. I think there's another more information.
Yeah, Cami. Sí, si seguís cliqueando va. There.
So breakfast, again, typically it's common to have toast, some cereal, granola, porridge, or eggs, and with a tea or a coffee, or some fruit juice. In that top the top right-hand corner, you can see the traditional full English breakfast, which you've probably all heard of before. This again it's traditional. We don't have this every day for breakfast, but it will always be served in a hotel or a B&B, or a pub, you know, sort of as the breakfast option. But in people's houses, we don't really tend to have that anymore. Not every day, anyway. So lunch, I mean, again, because
can you explain to us what how you make porridge?
Okay, so porridge, I mean, everyone has their different ways, but typically, so it's oats and milk, and I mean, you can either put it in the microwave or on the stove, and you heat it up so that it becomes really thick. It looks really disgusting because it becomes this really thick, sloppy bowl, and then you just put whatever you want. You can put cinnamon. People have fruit on the top. You really just add whatever you want, whatever flavors you want to it. But the base is milk and porridge stirred until it gets really thick and gloopy.
Have you eaten that? Have you eaten porridge here while you were here, or you've gotten used to our way of eating in the morning?
No, I've not had it here.
All right. Okay, good.
Yeah, so then lunch we have, I mean, something, because I guess we're at work or at school the whole day, you know, over lunchtime, we don't get to go home. So it's very typical at school and at work to make yourself what we call a packed lunch, or you go and put it in your lunchbox. So this is, again, roughly a sandwich, some crisps, some vegetables, some fruit, and a drink, or sometimes it might be some leftover food from the night before that you just put into your box and you take to work or you take to school. So it's just something quick and easy that we can eat at work during our lunch break, because we don't have the time to, well, most people don't have the time to go home, cook a full-on proper meal. So yeah, that's what we call a packed lunch. That's that second photo on the top.
Yeah, basically at the packed lunch, because you don't usually have a siesta, you don't take naps in the middle as we do in northern Argentina. So you would work from 9 to 5, right?
9 to 5.
All right, you don't get home to have lunch.
No.
Exactly.
So we usually have around an hour's lunch break. So I guess if you lived close to your work, you might be able to go home, but usually an hour's not long enough to go make a proper meal and come back. So
all right, so that's why you would have the packed lunch. I see that the brunch is not there between breakfast and lunch.
Oh, it's not actually. Yeah, maybe on a weekend we have what we call brunch, which is a combination of the words breakfast and lunch. And this is, I mean, it's whatever you want it to be. It can be a combo of both. It can be one, it can be the other. And you'd eat this at probably like 10 or 11. Maybe if you've woken up late, have one sort of meal in one. Yeah.
Okay. And then dinner?
And then dinner, yeah, so usually between 6 to 8. So that's kind of a big difference, way earlier than it is here. It's seen for us as the main meal of the day. And again, this depends on what people like to eat, but it will usually be a meat dish, maybe some pasta, curry, stew, sausages, you know, anything that you like, but it's usually a bigger cooked meal, because we don't have that during the middle of the day.
So was it hard for you to get used to eating dinner at 9, 10 p.m.?
It was, yeah. At first it was. I was like, why? I'm hungry now.
I'm hungry. I'm starving.
Yeah.
All right.
No, yeah, I'm getting used to it, I think.
All right. So, but you snack at 6 or at 8 or at 7 because you get hungry, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Good. So another one, Gabby? Good.
Yeah, I think there's one more as well. So Sunday roast, again, the first photo at the top. I mean, you might have heard of this before. So it's a typical meal eaten every Sunday at around 1 or 2 p.m. So like a lot later. So it's roast meat, roast potatoes, vegetable gravy, which is like a sauce made out of the juice of the meat. So the tradition is that it's eaten every Sunday. But nowadays, most families won't do this every week. And because, you'd usually invite all your family over, or you'd go with your family to the pub, because the pubs serve this. They serve it every Sunday. So again, it's a bit like the traditional full English breakfast. Hotels and places and pubs will serve it every Sunday, but in reality, not every family does this every weekend. And again, something that's maybe a bit more confusing is that the names of meals can actually differ based on where you live in the UK. So in the south of England, you call it breakfast, lunch, and dinner. In some places in the north of England, you call it breakfast, and then what people in the south would call lunch at midday, you'd actually call that dinner. And then the last meal, you call that tea, or some people call it supper. So my mum, she's from the north of England, so she always calls our last meal tea. Spelt the same way as the drinking tea. I don't know why, but that's just the case. So you might be talking to someone about dinner, and you could have a completely different. You might be having a packed lunch, but they might be having a Sunday roast. It just depends on how you use the word dinner or tea.
But if she was talking to someone from the south, she would use the word tea, or she would change it to dinner so as to make herself understood?
I mean, generally, you kind of know. If I was talking about it in the morning, it might not be very clear, but generally we're understood. So I live in the south of England, but I've always called it tea. And all my friends know that I'm on about dinner. So generally you're understood within the UK. But if you come from somewhere else and you have no idea that tea is not just the drink, yeah.
Well, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Another thing that was quite different is the types of shops. So in the UK, the most common types of shops that we have and that we use are called supermarkets. So these are big shops that tend to stock fresh meat, dairy, and groceries as well, all in one place. Most of them will also have in-store bakeries or a fish counter as well. And in the biggest supermarkets, you can even buy clothing, homewares, and electronics. So some will sell light bulbs, for example. Some even sell phones and laptops. They're in the very biggest ones, but supermarkets just combine everything, and they're the most common types of shop we have. So we have various different brands of supermarkets. Some are known as more expensive, and some are known as less expensive. So there's a kind of, if you say to someone, "Oh, I shop here," they might go, "Oh, you're fancy." But yeah, so some would just have higher prices and a better reputation, maybe. But yeah, but then we also do have independent greengrocers, butchers, and bakeries. We have those as well as supermarkets, but they tend to be a little bit more expensive to buy things individually, as the produce is often locally sourced or locally made, which for us is more expensive than maybe importing something cheaper from abroad. But I mean, that just depends. So we have both options, to either buy things from individual shops or to go to a supermarket and have everything there.
Yeah.
Nowadays, especially for people who work during the week, it's very common for them to order their weekly shop to their house, or order it to the supermarket and collect it at a time that's good for them, which we call click and collect. Whereas if you could also deliver it to your house. So you order it, you put all your items in online, you select the ones you want, you select a day and a time. So Tuesday at 6:30 in the evening. And then at Tuesday at 6:30, they'll come to your house in that van below, or one similar, covered in some type of food. And they drop it off at your house for you to avoid you having to go. So maybe for older people who can't get to supermarkets as easily, or just for people who don't want to go in the weekend rush and want something delivered midweek.
So tell us about your experience here with the shop. So have you been to the greengrocers, to the, I don't know, the bakeries? Do you do the shopping, or does anybody else does it for you? Does anybody else do it for you?
We go together. I go together with the girl that I live with. But yeah, more the individual shops. And then once a month we go to a bigger one to sort of stock up on the things that we need, really.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you like our shops?
I do like your shops, yeah.
Lots of bakeries. There are lots down there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think there might be another bit of information on this slide. Yeah. So we also have corner shops or news agents, that I think they were originally called. So these are small shops in your neighborhood, just down the street from where you live, that originally stocked items such as newspapers. So the daily newspaper, which is how it got its name, news agent. But I mean, they sell everything from stationery to greeting cards, cigarettes, snacks, sort of anything that you'd want maybe and they're open in the evenings. So when maybe the shops have shut, they'll be open. So if you need to go and grab something that you can't get because the shop's shut, they'll have it.
It would be similar to our kioscos then.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was used to, it used to be only for newspapers, but now it's just for lots of things.
Yeah, lots of
All
things.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Nightlife.
Nightlife, yeah. So this is different. So I mean, if you know anything about the UK, you've probably heard of a pub. We they are everywhere. I should have actually researched how many pubs there are in the UK, because there's hundreds, if not thousands. So pubs actually stands for public house, and it's kind of in the name, that it's not a house, but it kind of feels like a house when you walk in. There'll be sofas, there'll be chairs, there might be a fireplace, and it's just a really social area where you go to sit, drink, chat with your friends, play card games. They'll always have the TV with the latest sports game on, so you can go to sit and drink and watch the sports. And then many will also have an outside garden for people to enjoy the sun in the summer. The more fancy ones also have heaters for in the winter. So if there's not enough room inside, you can still sit outside with your coat and the heater. So yeah, they're really, really social places, and we have them absolutely everywhere. So you'll be served a range of alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks, to cater for everyone. So families will go during the day, and then they're also used for adults in the evenings. So they're usually open from 11 a.m. until 11:30 p.m. I think by law they have to shut at 11:30. No pub is allowed to be open later. And however, I think actually when there might be the World Cup on, or we have what we call the Euros. So it's actually, I think they start today. So it's like the World Cup, but it's just for like European countries for football. So I think they're allowed to extend maybe their closing time by half an hour or an hour during this period. But apart from that, they have to, by law, shut at 11:30.
So that would be the curfew.
Yeah.
And here there's a question by Natalia. What would be the difference between pub and bar in the UK?
I mean, so bar is late, so it's just later. You usually can't sit down. It's more, they'll have more loud music. It's more the vibe of a club. But it's a bit like the bars here, that you have, you go there for a few drinks. But I mean, a pub, you can really sit down, you can spend as many hours there as you want. It's a lot more relaxed. I think for pubs, maybe you might dress up more. Bar, you might dress up more to go to a bar. It's more of an event. Whereas a pub, you could literally rock up wearing anything, take your kids with you. It's a very social, familiar setting. Whereas bars are more, for the late evenings if you're going out. Type of
But
thing.
can you go into a pub if you're underage?
Yes, because they can serve food.
Oh, all right.
I think you can't, often in a pub, you'll have the bar section and then maybe seating. So I don't think they can go to the bar.
Okay.
There are some laws around that. And again, they might differ in each pub. If you're with parents and stuff like that and you're underage, it's all right. If you were underage with a group of underage people, probably not. You probably wouldn't be allowed in.
Oh, that's
If
why.
you were going with adults or your parents or anyone. Then,
because I wanted some of my students to go into a pub because I remember it was the oldest in London or something like that. And we wouldn't be allowed in because they were underage. But it wasn't at night. It was in the afternoon. It was early in the afternoon. And they were asked for their IDs and
Okay.
they wouldn't go in. So they didn't have the chance to see a pub. Yeah. But there was a huge bar there, so it might have been because of that.
Yeah.
There was a counter, and they told us that there would be fines that are very high fines if they find an underage there.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing that England and the UK are very big on is being underage and not being allowed in if you're underage. You'll almost always be asked for your ID. And even buying alcohol in shops, in most shops they actually have a question. It's a policy and they call it question 25. So the person at the checkout, if they are allowed, if they think you look younger than 25, they are allowed to ask to see your ID. To check, even though you can technically buy alcohol from 18. But I guess you could be a really young looking 25-year-old, I don't know, which I think would be a compliment. But yeah, we have a question 25 policy in a lot of places. So what I've noticed maybe in Europe, in France, in Spain, and Italy, they don't seem to have a problem with if you're underage or if you're not, you're sort of allowed anywhere. But in England, you do definitely have to be 18, and they will check this always.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, you could just go to the pub for a night out. You could start drinking early and stay there. But if you wanted to move on, you could then go straight to a bar for a few drinks, and then you could even move on to a club, which I think they open at around 11:30, but no one goes that early. You'd be the first one on the dance floor alone. So most people get there. I mean, we have last entry in clubs, which is usually around 1:30. So you usually try and get there for around 1 a.m. or between 12 and 1, because otherwise you won't be let in. And then they're usually open until 4. Some are open until 5 or 6, but that's something that's very different. We start a lot earlier. You might go to the pub at around 6, 7, 8 p.m. and then you'd get home. If you did the full thing, you'd get home at around 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions so far? You can type them there, or you can ask. If not, we move on with the following topic. All
Yeah,
right.
so I mean, the next thing that was different was school and work hours, and then also I'll move on to shopping opening hours. So students between primary and secondary school attend school between around 8:30 to 9 a.m. and then until 3:15 p.m. So we finish a lot earlier, but again, it's the same as when we work, you know, the whole day with no break in between, or, you know, no siesta. So we'll usually have a 20-minute break around 11, and then around a 45-minute break for lunch at 12:30, 12:45. And that photo is just a typical secondary school timetable. So you'll sort of have 3 subjects in the morning, 2 between your first break and lunch, and then 1 after lunch before you go home. At university, some classes can take place until 7 p.m. But only at university. Everywhere else it stops at 3:15. And then it just gives you a chance to do maybe some after school activities, some sport between 3 and 4.
And here, what did you learn about our timetable in secondary school, primary school?
Yeah, I mean, so you start a lot earlier in the morning, 7:30, I think, and then you can finish a lot later as well, 9:30, I think. Is that? Yeah. I don't know if that's the latest. So that is very different. But then also it never gets that hot. For us at midday, we can sort of brave the heat throughout midday. we don't need that. We don't need that break.
All right. Okay. I guess this was the last topic, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Timetable and Cami, if you keep on clicking, I'm not sure if there were other things there or not. Well, yeah.
So again, working hours in the UK, again, it can depend on the job, but usually it's between 9 and 5 or 9 to 5, with a 1-hour lunch break in the middle of the day. So typically if you work in the UK, you'll be working 8 hours a day, 40 hours per week. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, which 40 hours per week in total. And then, I mean, on shops, during the week, high street shops and retail shops are typically open from around 9 till 6. Bigger supermarkets are probably open between 6 a.m. and 10 or 11 p.m. Just so that if you know, everyone's working 9 till 5. So if all the shops shut at 5, that would be pointless because no one would be able to go. So they usually open a bit earlier and a bit later to allow people to go around work times. And then on Sundays, shops will either have limited opening hours, so probably between 10 and 4. Sometimes it's 10 and 2. Again, it just depends on the shop. Or some smaller shops might just be shut completely on a Sunday. So you do need to know where you live. If you're going to run out of milk, I don't know, on the weekend, you need to make sure you go on the Saturday so that you have some for the Monday. Because I've been caught out so many times where I think that a shop's going to be open on a Sunday and it's just not.
Well, here they are not open either. And here there's Ornella is saying they have longer periods as a school, around 50 minutes each. Yeah. So we have 40-minute periods or 80. And she's saying that you've got around 50 each, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, in primary and secondary school, it's like an hour usually. And then at university, I mean, it can depend. Usually around 50 minutes, but you might have some lectures that might be 2 hours. And you'll probably have a 10-minute break once it's been 1 hour. But yeah, 50 minutes to an hour are our typical lesson times. Yeah.
Okay. So far you've been talking about differences mainly. What were have you found any similarities that you felt at ease, you felt at home because it was exactly the same?
Ooh. I don't
Or
think
no?
anything's been exactly the same. I think everything's a bit different in small ways. You know, there's some things that haven't really shocked me. I'm now trying to think of them.
Or the perception of time. I'm always obsessed with time because I see that we are so different. So maybe being punctual, being on time, being late. Like if you're having someone over, for example, if we organize a party or something, you are not supposed to be there on time because the guest will be still cooking or something. It's rude to show up at that time. So I don't know if you've had any of those experiences, being there early and there was nobody, or everybody being late, or the students not arriving, all the perception of time.
Luckily I haven't so far. Because I mean, I'd say when I go into the school, usually they're on time because it's more of a schedule that you have to follow. And then if I've gone out with friends, I've gone out with other friends, so I go when they go. So I'm never really alone in that situation. So that hasn't happened to me just yet. But I think something that I have found similar actually is love of animals and pets and dogs in particular. Everyone here has dogs. Everyone loves dogs, which is I would say is exactly the same, or cats. It's exactly the same in the UK. They're a very big part. If you have them, they're a very big part of the family in a lot of households. So that's something I was kind of surprised at. I don't know why, but yeah, that's I'd say that's a similarity.
All right. Okay. So I don't know if there are some people here that I guess most of them are teachers of English here. By the way, I remember we used to be taught that we could say teacher of English or English teacher, and depending on where the stress was, it would be that you are English, like from England, or that the subject was English, like English teacher and English teacher. Then we were told that we should be saying teacher of English. So what's your opinion on that?
I mean, I've always said English teacher in the same way that I would say science teacher, maths teacher, art teacher, music teacher. I think probably maybe because it's shorter in England, we don't like to say the whole phrase, oh, you're a teacher of English. And everyone will understand what you mean. I think unless you put the accent or the stress on it wrongly, then someone might look at you a bit funny and go, did you mean to, well, wait, are you now saying something that I don't think you're saying? You're an English teacher rather than what I think you're trying to say is English teacher. But we always tend to use the shortened version.
All right.
But definitely, if you do put the stress on English, it might make us question, oh, hang on, what are we trying to say? But yeah, no, English teacher, I think.
So are you an English teacher and an English teacher?
I'm an English teacher and an English teacher.
Both. All right, perfect. All right, okay. So, well, thank you, Fabia. I don't know if there are any questions here. I will switch to Spanish just in case because I'm not sure who's here, who's attending. Bueno, le damos las gracias a Fabia que nos dio esta presentación. No sé si tienen justo tenemos una profe de fonética single accented. Por eso preguntaba lo de teacher of English, English teacher, English teacher. No sé si tienen alguna pregunta que le quieran hacer, quieren practicar su inglés y hacerla oralmente, quieren escribirla, relacionado a los temas que presentó o no. Ahora tenemos que pensar en el tema de la próxima charla, así que vamos a tener en cuenta las cosas que nos pusieron en el Google Form. Y si hay algo que quieren que Fabia desarrolle, alguna temática específica, avísennos. No sé si tienen alguna pregunta, Nati, Ornella, o si quieren participar y hablar. Cami, ahora sí podemos dejar de compartir. Bueno, eh, estaban los datos ahí de la SUBSE, de la Dirección de Plurilingüismo, que es la que organiza estas charlas. Ahí vamos a ver a la galería. Muy poquitos con cámara prendida. Shame on you guys. Turn them on. Talk to her. Make the most of it. Nati. Ahí tenemos a Nati. Okay, Ornella. All right. Okay. So well, you know each other, don't you, Nati and Fabia, because you work at the teacher training college. All right. Okay.
She was
And
attending a class. She focused on spotting the differences, how she learned her mother tongue, French and Spanish.
Yeah, nice. Well, by the way, we're going to organize another talk in French because her level of French is really high. It's C1. So we're going to be organizing one for teachers of French teachers, not teachers of French, French teachers. And here we've got teachers from all over Chaco, and there's one from Jujuy, Analia. Hi. She has my same last name, but she's not my sister. So Analia is joining us from Jujuy.
I'm really thankful for this opportunity. So, hi, dear Chaco colleagues. Nice to meet
Northern Argentina.
you. Yeah, definitely.
Right. Okay, and I don't know where the others are from. Which cities are you from? ¿De dónde es el resto? Bueno, sé que hay alguien de Saspeña, había de otras localidades. Bueno, es un horario medio complicado, algunas están en clase, así que no sé. Nati, would you like to ask any question? Analia, Ornella, Ana, Marianela, Andrea, Graciela. Any questions? Machagay, okay. Andrea de Machagay, okay. All right. So no questions, guys? No, okay, good. Well, tenemos a Camila que nos está acompañando de la OFI, de Dirección de Plurilingüismo, que nos acompañó con las diapositivas. Gracias, Cami. Y tuvimos un inconveniente con el canal de YouTube, así que bueno, después vamos a subir a la plataforma de YouTube de la provincia para que quede grabado y lo puedan consultar. Así que bueno, si no hay más preguntas, gracias, Fabia. Así que quédense conectados, stay tuned, porque seguramente va a haber una próxima, ya vamos a ir pensando en la temática. Así que bueno, gracias por conectarse desde todas las provincias del norte y nos estamos viendo. Gracias, Fabia. Que tengan
Gracias a
lindo
vos,
fin
María. Igualmente.
Bye
Gracias.
bye.
Chao,
See
chao.
ya. Bye bye.